So as much as we think about BAU, we really have to think about CAU, which is change as usual. I think if we tend sometimes in projects to get quite dramatic about, the change has to have the process, and it has to have this, and you have to have the training, and you have to do that. And, I think people are really so much more adaptable and agile. I mean, no one really trained anyone on how to use Google. No one really trained anyone on how to do online shopping. We learnt that pretty fast. So I do think there's a leveling that happens here. One is there is change that you can do, and you have to be quite pragmatic about the fact you are dealing with intelligent human beings who live entire lives and manage change in that life and bring all of the skill sets you can to bear on the organisation. Then there are some changes that absolutely you need to embrace some of the lots of the change methodology, and particularly around things like human-centered design.
Welcome to episode 40 of the Inner Game of Change podcast, where I focus on exploring the multi-layers of managing and enabling organizational change. My name is Ali Juma, and this is the Inner Game of Change podcast. Today, I'm beyond thrilled to chat with Francis Cawthra, Chief Executive Officer for Cenitex, a thought leader and an amazing human. With a wealth of leadership experience in both public and private sectors and leading complex and technology-based organizations, Frances' secret recipe for success is her relentless focus on helping her people and stakeholders succeed. In today's episode, Frances shares with me her views on the outer game of change, an episode never to be missed. I am grateful to have Frances chatting with me today. Frances, thank you so much for your time and welcome to the Inner Game of Change podcast. Eternally grateful that you are agreeing to talk to me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Ali. I'm really looking forward to what is becoming, or has become for some time, a really interesting topic at many fronts.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Today we're going to talk about change from a leader perspective, and I really look forward to this conversation. But before we dive deep into the topic, Frances, it would be fantastic if you introduce yourself to my audience.
Yes, look, thank you very much. My name's Frances Cawthra, and I'm the CEO of Cenitex. Cenitex is a state-owned enterprise. It's owned by the Victorian government. It's run by an independent board, and the chair of the board reports to the Minister, the Honourable Danny Pearson. We really have about 6 or 7 key services that we deliver. We're a shared service provider, and in particular around things like hosting, network, cloud services, security, identity, desktop collaboration, support and services, service management, including problem management, change management from a technical perspective, and incident management. And we also have branched out into newer services of recent times, such as application development and disaster recovery as a service.
Fantastic. That will keep you very busy, Frances.
It keeps me on my toes.
Excellent. Well, just for my, audience, Victoria is in Australia, so it's one of the states in here. Lots of my listeners are actually overseas, and predominantly you service government agencies in the tech space. And right. I've had some clients that I worked with, and then they access your services, and then it's been really tremendous to actually see it firsthand. So I was quite happy with the whole experience. And I'm not saying this because you're with me on the podcast. That's the reality of it. There was an experience. I was happy with it. And then later I realized you are the CEO. So I was not surprised by then. There was one of my guests, last year, Francis, he described the economy as the project economy. We are in the project economy currently. There's lots of things happening. As a leader, how do you see the landscape? Is change going to accelerate? Is it going to stabilize? Is it going to slow down? There are three things actually happening now. There's the velocity of change, there's the volume of change, and also the complexity. How do you see things from where you sit?
I think that's a really interesting question that you've got there. I don't think there's any slowing down that's going to happen. I think COVID accelerated digitization, digital channels, the way it turned the way we work really on its head. So I don't think it's slowing down. I do think it's accelerating. I do think the volatility of the change is also accelerating. They sort of go in a path there together. When I think about Cenitex supports about 60,000 plus public servants, and the ability for us to be able to manage to get them to work from home really broke the back of those very staid ideas about where work is. And we've really come to that point that says work is not a place we go, it's a thing we do. And so I think when you start to refer to things like projects and the velocity of those, I think they're continuing to increase. I do think leaders are seeing the current economy as a temporary issue that they're going to have to manage for their organisations. But I think really strong leaders see the temporary but look to the strategic to find out how you can navigate your organisation, taking the tactical into account, but not losing sight of where you need to be.
If change, and I like this, change is something that we do. If change is something that we do, does that mean that we need to look at building a change-capable organization?
I think change, I've always had this sort of philosophy a little bit about it, probably since the early 2000s when we started to accelerate the change in dimensions of technology. So, smartphones in 2008 and even cloud computing that was an idea back in the 90s really came to the forefront in 2012 or thereabouts. So as much as we think about BAU, we really have to think about CAU, which is change as usual. I think if we tend sometimes in projects to get quite dramatic about, the change has to have the process, and it has to have this, and you have to have the training, and you have to do that. And, I think people are really so much more adaptable and agile. I mean, no one really trained anyone on how to use Google. No one really trained anyone on how to do online shopping. We learnt that pretty fast. So I do think there's a leveling that happens here. One is there is change that you can do, and you have to be quite pragmatic about the fact you are dealing with intelligent human beings who live entire lives and manage change in that life and bring all of the skill sets you can to bear on the organisation. Then there are some changes that absolutely you need to embrace some of lots of the change methodology, and particularly around things like human-centered design, making sure that your change is embracing of all diversity and inclusion aspects, because otherwise I think we do tend to see things in a very linear way.
Yep. And the workplace nowadays is a reflection of our society. So anything to do with change and the design is going to have to take all those diverse aspects into consideration. You mentioned something really wonderful, Francis, which is change as usual. Is this your message?
Yeah, well, it certainly is to my organisation. I think I don't know who said it. It certainly wasn't someone. It wasn't me. Someone said that it can take you 5 years to do a week's worth of change, or you can do a week's worth of change. It'll take you, a week to do 5 years. And I think that's what was COVID. And what it really opened up was the art of the possible. Yeah. I think for today's organisation, and certainly for Cenitex, the things that we grapple with now around change is when organisations are in crisis, they do the undoable, right? We've seen it time and time again, whether it's global financial crisis or whether it's, big seismic shocks that, hit our financial institutions and banking. But what we do the minute the crisis is over, we slingshot back into all of the things that we used to do, and all of the barriers come back up. And I think for Cenitex, when we look at change now, the real focus that we have is, how do we do the undoable by choice, not by crisis? So how do we create spaces where people can be innovative, they can bring their ingenuity to the table, they can fail safely, they can discover safely, and then we can bring muscle memory to saying, actually, this problem, we're going to treat it as though it was the crisis, and we all need to get together and create it by choice. And I think that's the really big thing that people are struggling with around the way that change has impacted us through COVID. The next big thing, I believe, for organisations is doing the undoable by choice.
Fantastic. You touched on a few things, bring up the resilience in the workforce, being proactive about the change. So that's the intentional purpose. And the last one is fail safely. So that is a topic, psychological safety is a big topic and I've had a few guests that discuss that with me. Let's just talk about the psychological safety. As a leader, what would be some of the things that you will encourage in your organizations to create that psychological safety?
Well, we've actually done a great deal of work already. Some of that is around breaking down stereotypes, and we've had a huge focus on diversity and inclusion. And the way we think about it is diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice, and equity is the goal. So if you start to think about how you bring equity to the table and you lift everybody up, then you start to understand what are the things around diversity inclusion that create safety. Where is the open conversation? Where is the safe sand pit to play in, so to speak? So we've had a huge focus on the strength of our leadership teams, really working with them around bringing people together so that they can share their ingenuity, and that they can do that safely. So we've focused on diversity, inclusion, engagement and alignment. And over the last 3 years, we've seen our engagement and alignment scores, jump by 10, 15, 20% year on year in the organisation. So we must be getting something right around that. And the other thing that we feel really pleased about what we've done in trying to really create this community of safety is we've worked around education. We've worked around vulnerability management. We've worked around authenticity, positivity, the power of language, the fact that, language creates culture and culture comes from the top. So all of the leaders in the organisation are responsible for that. And late last year, we actually did some work with Great Place to Work, the Institute, and we were certified by them as a great place to work. Fantastic. So we really see that honing in on people rather than technology. And I think COVID gave us a bit of a view about that. So I would say the industry more generally prior to COVID in technology, we would almost be a little bit, maybe a little bit self-centered in that they always had a piece of technology that could fix something. Yeah. And now suddenly we end up in the middle of COVID and there's no point bringing a piece of technology to the table. You have to bring people and ingenuity to the table. And I think that was the moment where, we actually did do internal crowdsourcing. We've run hackathons, things we've never done before, improvement and innovation sessions. We ran a big exhibition called Cenitex Connect late last year. And all of these little things are the building blocks where we start to say, change is a safe thing to do. You can do it with safe, sensible hands, but you really do have to trust the ingenuity of your people to get it done. And, I do think now we see when we go to customers, we don't bring technology to the table, we bring our people to the table. And that is a big shift for technology companies.
Fantastic. And look, there's a lot of research now and findings, not that we wanted people to finish a PhD to tell us that in a state of threat, then learning and capability won't grow. In fact, comprehension and will depreciate. So it's in the best interest of a business to create that psychological safety in there. We're not saying, day in, day out, you go and cause, fail and fail and fail. What we're saying is that it's okay to fail, to learn from that, and we move on. So sometimes we need to go slower to go faster later. So that's the whole principle behind it. You mentioned something really important, which I was going to touch on later. But since you've mentioned that the language and the power of language and the communication within an organization, you are in a unique situation. You've got your internal customers, your employees, but you also service customers outside your organizations. Mm. And you are in the delivery industry. So how do you manage that power of language? And what is your message to your comms department, to your change management department, about how they want to manage that?
I think the language is really important. Certainly, we're starting internally. And in fact, we just had a meeting this morning, interestingly enough, with our people leader community. And we really wanted to talk about things like courageous conversations, things about, behavior you walk past is behavior that you accept. Mm. And in fact, you breed. And what are two or three of the really most toxic things that you can allow to happen in your organisation? And one of the first ones is incivility. Incivility is well shown now and demonstrated to cost organisations a great deal of money through people becoming very disaffected if they are treated with genuine respect. I think that actually goes, so what we're doing now is we're pulling together our customer experience, our employee experience, and driving total experience across that, because I think, way back when we worked together, it was well known that if your employees are well respected and treated well, how can you expect them to treat customers respectfully and treat them well? Because that happens. So for us, I think we're really driving home internally first around the importance of language. And we do talk about it very much about authentic language. It's not about positivity that sounds hollow or sounds false. It's about a true understanding that your language and leadership in itself casts a long shadow. So people are watching, they're listening. How you treat people, as an example, very much reflects what they think is okay through the organisation. Now, I mean, that's been around forever and a day, but I think it's crystallised a lot more through COVID when there were things like, be kind. And I think the language is much more agile and thoughtful and mindful now than it probably was back in 2019. I think people are much more prepared to be open to authentic positivity, not hollow positivity, to authentic vulnerable leadership where you get stuff wrong, No one's perfect here. I do think people are perceiving it and opening a different channel for people to be like that and it to be okay. I think a lot of the work that's been done with the likes of Beyond Blue and Are You OK Day are all and the fact that mental health is now part and parcel of your health and safety responsibilities as an organisation is going a long way to opening up the field and enabling. And even that sense that you talk about, we're not talking about failure upon failure upon failure. I'm wondering whether even that for me now sounds a bit strange. Is it really failure, or are we testing the extremes of what we know?
Yeah.
And every circle we break through, we know a little more.
And you won't learn unless you break things, right? And In fact, that way of learning is the only way to help you fix things in the future, because it's only when you break them. You touched on a very important point, which is the employee experience. Nowadays, look, there's the phenomena that, employees have got a lot of options. COVID has opened a lot of doors for a lot of people and opportunities. One of the things that I promote, Francis, in my practice is around the change experience, and I call it a positive change experience. If we are in the delivery space, and everything we do is around projects and delivery, the way we manage it and the experience of that management is what's going to create an engaged culture or not. Second thing, it will line up or create that alignment between what the leaders are telling us and what the people on the grounds are actually delivering. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with the intent of what you're saying. I do think, as I mentioned, that total experience has to be driven through from a culture, people perspective for employees first.
Yes.
That has to go through. I think from a projects perspective, we run over 600 projects a year, in addition to business as usual in terms of how we run that. And definitely experience of those 600 projects can make or break your interface into your customers.
Yeah.
Because even when you can't make the project, one of the things that we've instituted in the last few years is projects can be red for very good reasons. They can be amber for very good reasons.
Yeah.
But it's the communication that you have with your customer as to why they're in that position. I mean, it might be the customer saying, I'm not all ready yet for you to put this in. And so we've spent a lot of time, particularly around our projects, is the constant communication with customers, so they understand why something is red. They may want to turn it red for all sorts of good reasons. So red isn't bad, but the worst thing you can have in projects is what they call a watermelon green. So it's green on the outside, but it's really horrible and ugly on the inside. And that's where you lose customers' trust.
Yes.
Watermelon greens are all bad. I'd rather see a project red and know all the reasons why you'd have it red, and that the customers agreed it's red and they understand why it's red. But the delusion of having the other one is the single deal breaker, really, with your customer.
One of the challenges, Francis, by the way, I'll remember that every time I see a watermelon now. One of the challenges in each organization is not unique to Cenitex, probably. It's all well and good that we have an idea about that the change would need to be positive, because that positivity will creep into engagement. So next time when we roll out a change, we strongly believe that, look, the organization is going to support me, is going to guide me through those, is going to train me well. And if I stuff up, I'm okay, as long as I learn out of it. We create this vision, but an organization is a dynamic organism. Some parts of the organization will follow that vision, and some parts will be lagging behind. How do you create that consistency around how you deliver change?
I think that's an eternal issue. And the reason I say that is because what you're actually referring to, I think, is what we call shadow culture. So when you're driving cultural change through an organization, you have a spectrum of people on that journey. And so when you're 18 months down the track, you will have people who have only just started on the journey. And how do you keep going back and bringing those people with you, I think, is really important. And part of the way you do that, and again, I was just talking this morning to the people leaders, is you've got to communicate. And even when you think that you have said it so often that you think it's all done and dusted, start communicating again. Because what you have to do with the shadow culture that follows, that keeps remembering how things were, is you keep having to remind them, oh, yes, that's true, that did happen. But I don't think it's happened in the last 12 months I can remember. Is there something, and constantly keep bringing them up to date and saying things to them. Yes, you told us this, we did that, and now we're here. Yes, we were there, we changed this, and now we're here. So it's a continued circle of circling back to pick up people who are in a different place. And you have to just keep reiterating the communication and bringing them forward. It's an eternal part of an organisation's culture, is that it is evolving daily, and how you go and sweep people and bring them in is part of it. Because if you don't keep going back and bringing those up who perhaps didn't have a great change experience, the organisation still has to keep moving. Otherwise, they get stuck. They kind of get stuck in the past. And so for them, it's still happening like it always was. So it is kind of an eternal circle of communicating. But again, I have to come back to that point of, you have to do it authentically. And you can't just say the same thing. You have to find 2,000 different ways to say it. And you have to make sure you're actively listening to what the issue is, back in the tail end of that change. So there's no point just saying, you have to tailor your message so that people can hear it, those who are, a little bit behind.
Yeah.
So that's how I would see that's how we're just, working through it really, day by day, messaging, making sure that we tailor it so it's not just one big, foghorn at people, but really making it very tailored to their experience.
Multiple ways for the same message to get the point across. So one of the two things that I try to promote wherever I am, and look, I've learned the hard way over the years as well. I've learned through my practice that only through exaggerated effort you get a normal outcome. And so if you do minimum one email, forget it, that's not going to work. So what you're talking about here is different layers. First of all, multi-channel of communications for the same message. And the second thing is the scrutiny of the words. So the emotions comes in the words. And nowadays we work remotely, so everything is done through email or messaging. And the other thing is that you talked about we need that constant reminder. That's why people say they're tired of the word journey. I'm not tired of it. It's okay. I think we all need that roadmap. And so you always say to me, we've been there, and as a result of your work, we are here. And as a result of the work that you put today, we're going to be there. So when we talk about messaging, also, my counsel to all the people that I work with is around, tell me you're going to tell me and tell me you told me. So in that way, then I'm preparing you all the time, reminding you, and because people forget. And also you don't have the people for the next 10 years. Nowadays, the workforce is moving. And so your framework and your philosophy should be the same, leading the organization. I want to switch gear and I want to talk specifically about your personal experience when you see a change that has been delivered successfully. What are the landmarks of that change?
Well, I think it goes right back to what you've just said, and it really resonates for me, and that is multi-layered communication, multi-tailored communication. This idea of, I think the world, I can kind of get why people are a bit over the idea of a journey. If you think about maybe 10 years ago, or maybe even longer, you had a project and you got to that milestone and you ticked it off, and then you got to the end and you ticked it off. Whereas now it is much more about how do you remain contemporary. So milestones and landmarks will change. And so there's this sense that it doesn't end because you're always striving for the next piece. And I think that's some of the confusion a lot of the people have experienced, where you get a strategy, you put it in, you tick it off, and it's done. It's not really like that now because everything's moving so fast. The agility that you need in people to be able to switch and change And that's why I think the idea of testing and potentially failing and testing again is becoming the kind of the key piece of what you think about when you think about a contemporary culture or a contemporary organisation. Has to keep moving. It has to keep changing. So for me, when I think about really successful, nowadays, when you think about successful cultural change, it is about the longevity of it for as long as people are there. And I do understand now, the 3 to 5 years is that people normally stay in an organisation has reduced because of the war on talent, so to speak. So I think the journeys that people have, or the cultural journeys that don't go as well, is where they stick to this, program of this step, then this step, then this step. But the problem is your workforce has changed, your technology's changed, your processes have changed, your customers have changed, and you have to stay contemporary with those changes.
Fantastic. And there's an associated question to this, Francis. As a leader, a project is finished 3 months or 6 months after the project, we come to you, we present you with a dashboard of success markers. Some of them are related to people. Some of them are related to the financial side of the project and all of those things. And when it comes to the people side quadrant of those successes, what do you look for?
I'm very keen to understand things like, what would markers for me be, would be things like alignment scores, engagement scores, longevity of people, the satisfaction that they feel from the project. You can't disengage. That can't be the only thing. Of course, you've got to get financial benefits and all those sorts of things. But many of those are driven by the focus on people. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I've looking at my scores, there are things like, well, are we a great place to work? Have we been certified as a great place to work? Did we do it again the second year? Did we do it again the third year? What does my People Matters survey look like? And it's the state government's survey. What does my alignment survey look like? And what is it telling me? What are the critical pieces that are moving? So are my complaints going down, or are the fact that people are feeling confident to raise the complaint going up? Because I want to know about it. I don't want to hide it. Are my bullying and harassment going down, or are they going up? Yeah. So I think all of the people things that I would look for in that quadrant lead to discretionary effort. So your finances are going to take care of themselves. I mean, I know over the last 3 years, discretionary effort has been massive in Cenitex, and I know that because of what we've delivered in the middle of COVID, but my costs have not escalated in the same way that my workload has. So you can see people engaging with the issue, engaging with the ability to test and try things, bringing their ingenuity to the table and solving problems that no one's ever had. I mean, when you think COVID, every organisation in the world was in the same place and no one had the answer, really. You had to just, muddle your way through. And we did that with extraordinary capability and goodwill. So to me, that's what I look for in that quadrant. What are the metrics that tell me, are we easy to work with? Do we work with each other well? That's where your CX, EX come together. Customers see us as easy to work with. Do employees see that it's easy to get stuff done around here? And those two metrics really open up how successful the organisation is going to be.
That's fantastic. One of the things, there's a thinker, Australian thinker. His name is Peter Fuda. He said, change is not the goal is the goal. And so there's no point of delivering a project without realizing the goal. And the goal should not also just be financial, because you can achieve that at the expense of other things. And I love the idea that you look at the people side of things, because at the end of the day, you can save money but lose people. And so that's a losing battle already. Second thing, one of the things that I've been talking within the change community. Often, middle management and operational leaders, when a project is coming their way, they will give you the minimum time. So there's a level of resistance because they've got their operational priorities, they need to lead their units and all of those things. But one marker we thought when we deliver change well is that those middle management become more interested in whatever projects coming their way because they know only through those projects their units will be better. And if the units will be better, meaning the people will be better as well. Do you notice that at all? Or is this an aspirational thing that we all, will be looking forward to?
I think that is true. I'm just there's something you just struck there that I'm just pulling my thoughts together on, and what I think about whether it's project or it's business as usual or however that looks, I think the questions have changed, and I think I see middle managers looking at it. The world isn't binary. It's not I'm going to do this or this. The reframe has to be, how do I do both? It's the recognition that once upon a time, if you look at Mo Fox, who's the systems designer and thinker, she outlines that, look, there are essentially three types of problems in the world. There are simple ones, there are complex ones, and there are wicked ones. Mm-hmm. And, simple ones are baking a cake. Not for me, but The complex ones are where I think technology used to sit, that if they just threw enough effort at it, they'll solve it. And then there are wicked problems. And, I always think about those as having children. You can have two or three. You bring them up exactly the same way, but wow, do you get some different outcomes? Yeah. And now I think that we're middle managers and senior leaders in organisations are realising that there are far more wicked problems than we thought. And that's the ability to bring together a frame of it's not binary, this or that, it's both. How do we do both? It's not budget or service level. We have to meet budget and deliver the service level. You can't have them as opposing forces and pick one. You really have a lot more, and so hence it's not business as usual or projects. It's how do you bring them both together, because from that you create innovation, you stimulate your people, you allow them to bring ingenuity to the table, and they stay with you longer because they can see opportunity. It's not just, press the button or type the code or, they get this opportunity to try a number of things and to really extend themselves. And that's good for them and it's good for us. And yes, they may well leave us after they've done that, but they go out to be better in the industry. And in fact, I've had people who've left and come back, because they've realised that, that there's more here than, dollars are many out there in the market, whereas for government, dollars are not the key driver. It's great work that you can do. It's the ability for you to say, oh, you see that orange door? That's a safe haven for domestic violence victims. I infrastructured that. I set that up. Or it's I helped the bushfire people because I did this and this. It's about being able to see how you play a bigger role in society.
Fantastic. The wicked problem of managing change, who is responsible about it?
Wicked problems are, it's a culture issue as well. Mm. So you have to own it at the top, right? Yeah. You have to allow the organisation to expand and contract and to fret even over how do I do these things and support them by understanding that, these are wicked problems. There's not a single answer. There's no silver bullet. There's no, if I just do this, the world will be fixed, because the work that we do is more complex. As you say, you've got customers, you've got end users, you've got staff, you've got ministers, you've got a whole array of stakeholders in there, which creates the wickedness of some of the problems that you're trying to solve. But I still believe that by being able to create deliberate spaces for people to test their ingenuity, to create muscle memory around how you work in a crisis and can do it by choice, underpins that idea of the wicked problem. How do you reframe, and how do you allow people to expand and contract inside that safe place?
Fantastic. We are coming to the end of the podcast. Thoroughly enjoying this conversation, Francis, and I want to ask you about what would be your advice to the change management community? It's growing in Australia and globally. I am trying to make to be vocal about the importance of this particular practice. Do we get it always right? The answer is no, but I think we are a learning organization and community. As a leader in the business and in the community, what would be your advice to us?
I think it goes back to, something that you raised very early on, and that is, understanding the inner game and the outer game.
Yes.
And be mindful that you move between them. You're not boxed and trapped into either side. So being able to understand the change community's massive expansion, really through the difficulties of COVID, versus being able to lead an organisation through it. I think the communication, the open discussion, and the willingness to just try and get your head around it, in terms of the outer game versus the inner game. I think, all that is goodness. It's about also being vulnerable and open to hearing and active listening about some of the problems that you may be experiencing as a leader that don't really fit into the boxes of change as we currently know them. And I think just challenging the ability to have elasticity in your approach and in your thinking, to try and really engage people of many types and lots of thinking, as you have been doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this, Francis. Very wise words. It is a challenge for all of us. And look, I do believe that the responsibility and the accountability for the change is for the whole organization, not just the leaders and not just the middle management and even customers, but also employees. I think it's if the aim of soccer is to win the game, then the goalkeeper and the defender and the striker will have only one aim, which is help the team win the game. And so I look at it holistically. Sometimes people blame the project manager or the leader, or certainly not fair on anybody. It's a collective effort. So that's what I believe in, and that's what I promote. It's been a pleasure having you in my podcast, the Inner Game of Change podcast, Francis. However, I think you've inspired me to perhaps create another version for leaders like yourself, and we call it the Outer Game of Change. Before I let you go, how would people and listeners reach out to you if they want to ask you a question?
You can contact me via email, which is francis.cawthra@cenitex.vic.gov.au.
Fantastic. We're going to put all your information on the podcast, Francis. It's been a pleasure having you, and I hope to get you back at some stage in the future and talk about a different topic, a different challenge in your organization. And as a leader as well, I'm always interested in people's thoughts about the business and not just about their organization. Until next time, thank you so much for your time. Stay well and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Ali. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. To know more about my guests and this podcast, check the innergameofchange.com.au website. And remember, subscribe. I can't wait to share with you my next podcast. Until then, stay well and stay safe.